We are live.
There we are live. Why do you ask if my lights are on? Look how bright my face is compared to yours.
I'm talking
all
about
lit up.
background.
Oh, yeah. A little bit of blue back here. The cat was in the way. Let me fix it.
Are your curtains closed?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Is that better?
Well, welcome back from MacStock, Podfeed.
Welcome back. Yeah, Alan, do we have roll call? Do we have to roll call? Yes, we have rules around this place.
We definitely have
All
to
right.
roll call.
Let's call in roll call. There we go. We've got
Well
Alan
done.
and Seamus and Doc Tim and Frank and Joe from the Northwoods and John and Sandy and Steve. And it's going to be a great night because Big in Virginia, Kevin can't be here.
Well, no, he said he might be late. He may join us later.
Okay, but he might not come at all. It might be wonderful.
Allison. Well, he is enjoying himself. I think they have some birthday celebrations going on. So that's a good reason.
All right. Well, I think I should just start. What do you think? I got a lot to record today.
It looks like you got a lot, so
I do
agree.
All right, here we go. We're going to get started early and make fun of anybody who comes in late. Here we go. Hi, this is Allison Sheridan of the NosillaCast podcast, hosted at podfeed.com, a technology geek podcast with an ever so slight Apple bias. Today is Sunday, July 21st, 2024, and this is show number 1002. Doesn't fit with my music thing.
You nailed it.
Yeah, maybe. Let's see.
1002.
Yeah, but notice it didn't land on the music. I've got to speed it up.
Yeah.
All right. Copy link. Here we go. Well, this week I had the fun of being on Clockwise number 563 called Peripherally Curious from Relay.fm. This is with, it was with Paul. Okay, I'm winging it, and I'm not good at that. I didn't write it up. Here we go. Well, this week I had the fun of being on Clockwise again. It was number 563, and this time it was Micah Sargent and Lex Friedman rather than Dan Morin, so that was kind of fun. And the other guest was Paul Kafasis, a name you might know as the CEO of Rogue Amoeba, who make things like Audio Hijack and Fission and SoundSource and all the other great apps there. Anyway, we had a lot of fun. One of the topics was we talked about how do we primarily use our text entry, like smartphone, tablet, or computer, how much is where. Our involvement with user groups, either as a speaker or as an attendee. That was my idea. The apps we keep in our iPhone dock and why, which caused me to move one of the apps out of my iPhone dock, and how we use Apple Pay. It's a lot of fun, and you can find it at the link in the show notes or over at relay.fm. Oh, not Lex Friedman. You must know the story. He brought that up, Alan. There's a guy named Lex Friedman who is not a good guy at all. And he's not Lex Friedman. He's Lex Friedman. And he's actually recorded a song about the fact that he's not Lex Friedman.
Seriously. So this Lex Friedman's known apparently.
Yeah, he's a
knows
podcaster.
Oh.
But
I
he's
could see the
not a good
confusion.
guy. He's
Oh,
not.
boy.
No, he's a bad guy. So, yeah. He brought it up. I had never heard of this Lex Friedman guy. Look his name up, Sandy, and you'll get a flavor of the kind of the guests that he has on his shows. So I don't want to get into it on the show. All right, we keep going here. This week's Programming by Stealth was a very special tidbit installment where the most lovely Helma Vanderlinden joined me without Bart to walk through how she solved a real-world problem, that's hard to say, using the language JQ that Bart just finished teaching us. The problem to be solved was a need to analyze the installed applications on her Intel-based Mac before migrating to her new Apple Silicon Mac. The way she did this was she used a built-in terminal command to access system information on her Mac, and that allowed her to create a JSON file, and then she was able to use a series of JQ filters to remove data she didn't need and format what she kept in a more human-readable form. Helma walked us through every step of the way as she built up her JQ script to massage the data to her needs. At the end, I explained how I was able to take Helma's final CSV output and analyze the data in a spreadsheet using a pivot table. I had a blast, and so did Helma. Now, this is a great show for nerds, of course, but if you just want that script, you can actually download it and run it. Actually, not even download it, you just copy it off the website. You can copy it and run it yourself, and you don't have to understand all the nitty-gritty. But you can find Helma's fabulous tutorial show notes at pbs.barterfister.net under Tidbits 7, and you can find Programming by Stealth in your podcatcher of choice. It was cool. All right, let me see if I could do, I can show you what this looks like in the end. Why does Excel take so long to open?
Yeah, I've noticed that. I think it has to go talk to the mothership before it opens.
I guess, got to do the licensing. So after using her script, I kind of don't want to get into that, Alan, on the show. Do you mind deleting that, Alan? I don't. Steve, scroll away from that. But anyway, you can see this. This is the pivot table I was able to make in, I think it was 2 clicks from the data that was exported out of the CSV file. So you can see it tells me how many Apple Silicon, Intel, iOS, other Universal or web apps that I have on my Mac currently. It was really cool. It was super nerdy, super fun. All right, let's do a chapter mark here. Copy link. Oh, no. Oh, no.
What?
No. That's the wrong link. I need the real link. I have the wrong link in the show notes to... let me use this. Let's see, podfeed.com. Come on. As soon as I put in the M, it starts adding other junk to the end of it. Now they think they want to know. Oh, take a look at podfeed.com right now and notice the giant blue button. I should probably mention that is thanks to Kaylee. She said, how come when I go to your website, there's not a button to subscribe to the podcast?
First thing she noticed.
Yeah, no problem, Alan. I just didn't want it for the future reference. So she suggested I should, maybe I can work that in at the end of this. But there was a way to subscribe to the podcast, but you had to go to the hamburger menu if you're on the iPhone to get to it. And I haven't yet deleted Security Chit Chat Lite. I need to make myself a note. I keep forgetting to get rid of that one. Oh, she gave you advice too? Yeah, she's awesome. Let's see. CCATP Lite. Okay, I gotta get that out. All right. Okay, here we go. Oh, no, now I think I have the right, did I get the right link? Yeah. And that was this one, right? I want to make sure I fixed it here like I think I did. Yeah. All right. Where is my, there we go. Is this, I wrote this in the last few minutes, so I don't think Sandy's even had a chance to look at this one yet, but let's just do it. Every year after the MacStock conference, I like to talk about what I learned and what the experience was like. This year, the 10th anniversary event was even more amazing than ever. As Dave Hamilton said on the Mac Geek Gab, MacStock is like camp for nerds. Mike Potter continues to run a fantastic event, and he took things up a notch this year with a great new venue. Last year, we were in the very quaint town of Woodstock, Illinois, which is where MacStock got its name, and the theater we were in had a lot of charm. But that charm came at the sacrifice of the size of the venue. Because it was so small, Mike actually had to turn people away, and it made me very sad that there were people who wanted to attend and could not come. This year, he moved the conference to Crystal Lake, Illinois, which is a smidge closer to Chicago, making it only about 45 minutes from the airport. He held the conference at an IHG-owned Holiday Inn, which is also the conference center. That meant that all of the attendees were able to stay at the same hotel, go to the conference without driving back and forth, and there were a ton of restaurants nearby. The result was that we had around 100 attendees this year, which was great. The other big change Mike made was that he added an extra day. The conference still ran on Saturday and Sunday, but for an extra fee, you could come in a day early and on Friday go to workshops to learn specific things. I was lucky enough to be chosen to do one of the workshops, and I chose to do my Mac Tiny Tips. I couldn't go through anywhere near as many as I've written, of course, but I got a good chunk done, and I was able to give them a QR code to go learn all of the others. It was nice to be able to tell them they didn't have to take notes because every single one of those has all been documented. Now, if you'd like to watch the session, Steve recorded it and he posted it for all to enjoy. And of course, there's a link in the show notes. We also had Mike Schmitz teaching his workflow for journaling that he uses for his path to personal growth. It wasn't so much about the tools, but how to use them to get the most out of journaling. Our very own Marty Gensius, also known as Drunk Nick Nolte in the live chat room, did a really well-received presentation on how to use AI for peak productivity. He gave us specific techniques on how to achieve different goals. And I know there was a lot of buzz about it afterwards of people playing with it and doing different things that they hadn't thought of to use it for before. Finally, Mike Potter taught how to get started with Ecamm Live to stream a really slick-looking video. Now, while all of the workshops were great, had really good content, the room lighting was a real challenge. The rooms are lit more like a ballroom with overhead lighting, and those lights reflected off the screen. This was oddly more problematic if the information being projected was in dark mode. But oddly, it was still hard to see the live demos like my Mac Tiny Tips and Mike's instructions on Ecamm. Hopefully that's something to have improved for next year. We didn't want to pull down the overhead lights because then the speaker would have been in the dark, but I bet we have people there who could figure out how to light the speaker and then bring the lights down. Now, one thing happened during the workshops that I will never forget. Picture this. I'm up there doing my Mac Tiny Tips, and people are asking questions and offering new solutions to the same problems that I had already set up. And I love that. I love an interactive class. That's way more fun for me than just standing up there going, do this, do this, do this, lecturing. That's not fun. I want people to talk back to me. Now, I know most of the people who attend MacStock, more than half probably, and I definitely know the ones who speak up a lot. So I'm calling on people by name. I'm saying, hey, Ron, well, this is Steve, Sally, I'm calling everybody by name. But there's one woman in the back of the room I don't know, so while I'm calling on her as she contributes, I didn't know her name. Finally, while repeating her question so the folks watching the recording later would be able to hear the question, I asked for her name. I'll let you hear what happened next. That sounded like, you'll never believe what happened next. Okay, I've got the audio of this. Okay, here we go.
Are you playing audio? Because we don't.
You aren't hearing it?
No.
Come on. I made sure I was in.
I don't hear it at all. So I guess it's getting into Discord, but not. It's not.
Oh,
getting
okay.
into YouTube.
Okay. Okay, let me fix StreamYard. Sorry. It wasn't anything good yet. Basically, it was a question you can't hear, and then I'm gonna repeat the question. Always repeat the question when you're in a conference and somebody asks a question, not on the open mic.
Yeah, unfortunately, we didn't have the audience mic'd. So you'll hear Allison loud. You won't hear the question being posed loud.
Yeah, I'll back up a little bit just so you can hear. This is why you should always play you should always repeat the question.
A great open source utility you probably know about. RDM.
No.
GitHub. It's free.
Okay. Let me repeat what you're saying before we get too far. The person in the back of the room there what's your name? Kaylee. Oh my God, you are kidding me. That's who I thought it was. This is Kaylee. I've never met Kaylee in real life, and we've been friends for a year. Oh my gosh. I thought I recognized your voice, but I didn't want to guess. Oh, sorry. That was a big moment for me. We've been friends forever, never met in real life. She's from Japan, for crying out loud. All right, so So that was my genuine reaction there.
That was a pretty amazing moment.
Now, it's probably annoying to hear that quiet part, but it explains why I broke in like that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
That was special.
Okay, here we go. Not too excited. Oh, so I will explain to anybody who doesn't know who, shoot, this is going to be on YouTube. I can't show the picture, Steve.
So I shouldn't post it either?
No, unless you could stop sharing Discord.
Yeah, I can stop
sharing Discord, and then I need everybody to make comments so it'll scroll up high enough. Okay? Do you think we can do that, guys? Okay,
so
stop sharing Discord.
All right.
Okay. So this is me and Kaylee and Steve. comment.
What we need is Kevin here with this huge paragraph.
Yeah, really. So she told us it was fine to share her picture with the NosillaCast castaways. She said, of course the NosillaCast castaways can see my picture, but I just don't like to post stuff online. So, okay.
Well done, Jill.
This is going to be great. Yeah. Okay, you got to judge whether it's high enough, Steve.
I can tell.
Okay.
What it is.
All right,
we're good.
Okay, we're clear?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, Ian's here. I didn't see Ian Stig. Okay, that's perfect. Now, people come back are going to go, wait, what? What was that?
Kevin snuck in.
Oh, no.
Hello, Kevin.
Okay, so let me go ahead and keep recording here. Never met in real life. She's from Japan, for crying out loud. All right, All right, so do you see, you could definitely hear the excitement in my voice, but for those of you who haven't been listening maybe for 19 years and know every single story about the show, Kaylee was a huge contributor to the podcast for many years. She came to the live show, she did recordings for us, she was on Chit Chat Across the Pond with me, and she had her own podcast that I was an avid listener of. But as happens with podcasting, she drifted away and we lost touch for several years, actually. She popped back up in a text chat with me fairly recently, and we rekindled our friendship. What I did not know was that she had moved back to the United States from Japan, and that's how she was able to come to Macstock and surprise us. Steve and I spent a lot of time with Kaylee. We introduced her to everyone, and we all just had a complete blast together. As I said, realizing she was there in person was a great moment, and I will remember that forever. Now, speaking of the Nosilla castaways, we took a family photo that included most of the folks attending that were Nosilla castaways. That was fun, but what we did next was even more fun. We had all of the Nosilla castaways yell something at once. Let me play it for you right now. Actually, can you change that, Steve? It just says NosillaCast instead of Nosilla castaways.
Oh, I'm sorry. Where's that?
Okay. We had all right after the photo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay, here we go. It's really quick. I might have to play it twice. Okay, here we go. Play it for you right now. Hi, Mark! Isn't that great? Yeah, Guy was there. Should I play it twice? I thought that was really fun. Why not? But I mean, should I repeat it in the show?
Repeat what we all said?
Yeah, just the hi Bart twice. Okay, let me do it. Did you catch that? Let me play it again. Hi Bart! Okay, there we go. It was great fun to do, and it only took us 4 or 5 tries to get it right and to get somebody to record it properly, but it was really fun to do, and Bart sure got a kick out of it. Now, Saturday was filled with some terrific presentations with the theme of Level Up. One of my favorites was from Jill from the Northwoods, teaching organizational bliss with Notion. She's been teaching me a lot about Notion over the last couple of years, but she showed off her mad skills at the conference. She's a very engaging presenter, as you can imagine, and she has her own style that's just awesome. Now, on Saturday night, Kelly Guimont hosted a karaoke event that was a lot of fun. The big surprise for me was when Jeff Gamet and Kelly got up to the mic as they were handed a song to sing written by NosillaCast John Ormsby, aka NASA Nut in the live chat room. The song is called NosillaCast Island, sung to the theme of Gilligan's Island. Now, Steve is worried we'll get a takedown notice on our YouTube channel if we embed them singing the song, because when they were singing it, they had the background music of the real Gilligan's Island. Instead, let me present to you my attempt to sing an a cappella version of NosillaCast Island by John Ormsby. Yeah, nobody even made me do that, Jill. Let's see, Control 3, right? No, Control 4. Okay, did this one, Control 4. Okay, so now I'm going to drop this in. I'm going to play it here, Steve. Let's see. By John Ormsby. Just log right in and you hear a tale. It's a little too quick. Let me give it a heartbeat. Island by John Ormsby. Just log right in and you hear a tale with an Apple bias that started with a single show that now is loved by us. The mate was a handy video man, the skipper nerdy and brash. The castaways sit in Sundays for a 1 hour bash. A 1 hour bash. The sausage started getting ground, the tiny show was tossed. If not for the courage of the fearless crew, the episode could be lost. The episode could be lost. The show set sail many years ago from the shores of a western state, with Steven, the skipper too, a rechargeable dog and 2 cats, Lindsay and Bart, the professor named Mary, and here on NosillaCast Isle. Now this is the tale of Al's castaways, been around for a long, long time. They'll have to make the best of it, 'cause it's a sausage grind. The first mate Steve and the skipper too will do their very best to make sure you learn new things and always feel the guest. iPhone, iPads, no Apple cars, but other technologies. Programming by stealth, it's geeky as can be. So join us here each week, my friends, and you're sure to learn in style. From coast to coast and across the net, here on NosillaCast Isle.
Well sung, Allison, and well written, John. That was fantastic. John surprised us with that, by the way.
Yeah.
We didn't know he had done that. And all of a sudden, all these, well-known karaoke songs are playing or being sung to. And then they get up and Gilligan's Island, of course, they're just going to sing the Gilligan's Island theme song. Little did we know John had handed them a new set of lyrics.
Now sing a shanty. I think we should risk the video being online. Because the worst thing is they take it down. Or they strip the music off.
Let's see. If it's in... yeah, okay, we could do that.
I don't know.
But if it's embedded in your blog post, what they would do is take it down on YouTube, probably.
Right. And so we could take it out of the blog post.
The risk is I get a strike.
I don't know that you do get a strike, do you?
I've heard people
sometimes they just take the music off.
Sometimes they will take them down.
Yeah. Well, it's your call. All right, I got to keep recording here. Oh, Mike is lucky he didn't have to hear that. Here on NosillaCast Isle. Okay, maybe I shouldn't give up my podcasting career to go into singing, but I had fun trying to sing it. And thank you, John. That was very clever and a lot of fun. The lyrics are in the show notes. Now, we might have stayed up a little bit later than we should have on Saturday night doing karaoke, especially because I was the first one up on stage on Sunday morning. I wasn't really sure, wasn't super confident my topic would really resonate with people, but I got a lot of positive feedback on it. Maybe they were just being nice because I actually told them, please be nice. Anyway, the message I wanted to send for the conference theme of Level Up was to encourage the audience to learn new things with their Macs, especially if it's hard for them. Dr. Marianne Gary has talked to us in the past about how learning new things that are hard for you can help you maintain your current brain plasticity. Now, if you'd like to watch this talk, Steve recorded it and he posted that one online as well. And of course, there's a link in the show notes. Now, I want to call out Marty again for his interesting and interactive talk on how to guide others to do troubleshooting. After giving us ideas on how to help others figure out how to figure out their own solutions, he put up a chart that had 2 stories on it, one for the left side of the room to read and one for the right side. Now, we had quiet time, not enough quiet time. I had to keep telling him to be quiet so I could read. Anyway, we had this quiet time to read our case, and then we were supposed to holler out which of his solutions might help the person he described in that case study. It was a really great way to learn what he was trying to teach us. And one of the things I enjoyed about this exercise was that Kaylee and I disagreed on the solutions. The case study on our side of the room was about a woman who was hesitant to do upgrades because one time she had lost data when she did an upgrade. Kaylee thought it would be helpful to have her turn off automatic upgrades until she was more confident. But I disagreed quite loudly that this was exactly the kind of person who needs to have auto updates turned on. We continued to debate this topic throughout the weekend, and it was great fun. Now, the same thing happened quite a few times during the conference, and it got me to thinking that maybe a super fun segment for the NosillaCast would be Kaylee and Allison Disagree. I'm still working on convincing her to do it with me. Now, Kelly Guimont did a very unusual talk because, well, Kelly, she started by explaining that studies have shown that we can pay attention better if we can do some sort of fiddly motion with our hands while we're trying to listen. Fidget spinners and doodling are great examples of those tools. But she suggested that crocheting would be a productive thing to do that would also help you to pay attention. So then she passed out a ball of yarn and a crochet hook to every attendee and taught the entire class how to crochet. Now, I happen to be an avid crocheter, so I was enlisted to be a roving helper, getting people unstuck as they tried to figure out how to crochet. When you're first starting, you're convinced that you need at least one more hand to be able to do it. Now, my favorite new crocheter in the group is a man named Bill, who was so absolutely proud of his single chain of crocheting that I took a picture of him that I've put in the show notes. I found him delightful for another reason. I'll get to that in just a minute. Every year, Wally Cherwinski hosts the Macstock Film Festival, where he solicits short videos from attendees. Unfortunately, he and Wendy had to pull out of the conference at the last minute, so instead Chuck Joyner did the introductions. Steve contributed a terrific video about our trip to Antarctica, as seen through the eyes of Rico the penguin from the movie Madagascar. Now, our friend Ron is Rico's valet, and he allowed us to bring Rico to meet his brothers and sisters in Antarctica. You can watch Steve's video at the link in the show notes, and it's delightful. All right. All right. Speaking of delightful, let's get back to the delightful Bill and why I'm really in love with this guy. He got up on stage with Chuck and he explained that when he turned 80, he decided he needed to force himself to learn new things. Exactly like what I talked about in my presentation. But get this, one of the things he did to stretch his brain was to switch from Windows to the Mac at 80 years old. Now I understand why he was so excited during my Mac Tiny Tips workshop. Now, he went on to explain to Chuck that when he heard about the film festival, he decided to learn how to make a slideshow movie, how to do transitions, how to add music, and how to add titles to the movie. I'm telling you, I totally want to be Bill when I grow up. Now, while Bill held up his end of the age spectrum, one of the things I was really pleased to see was how many young people were there. The age demographic definitely moved younger this year, and you really need that for a movement to keep going. Now, on Saturday night, Dave Hamilton, Pilot Pete, and Adam Christensen did a live Mac Geek Gab with a Stump the Geek session, and it was awesome as they always are. We got to be the ones asking the questions. I gotta say, there's so many stories and things that happened and things I learned that I can't possibly hope to encapsulate all of them in one little article, and so many great people. I don't want to call anybody else out by name. I kind of restricted it to the NosillaCastaways here, but that presented, I should say. But I gotta tell you, we were all very sad when it was over, and we all started making our plans for attending again next year. If there's any way you can get to the Chicago area next July, I highly encourage you to attend Macstock. You will not meet a more welcoming and inclusive group of people, all hoping to learn and make new friends. Corky's
pretty
here?
good for, yeah, he just popped in. Well, maybe he's been here the whole time. Welcome, Corky.
You said that was pretty good for what?
Yeah, for writing that up, what, in 20 minutes or something?
Yeah, I wrote that at, probably started at 3:30.
Yeah, well done.
But it's like, Corky coming in is perfect timing. I didn't talk about Corky driving us. I didn't talk about
The wine tasting and
the wine tasting with Barry and his wife Bobby Ann. I didn't talk about going out to dinner. I didn't talk about anybody else's speech. I didn't talk about Doc Tim getting to see him again. I didn't talk about, because I could have gone on for days, so I had to just keep it tight. All right, what do I want to talk about next?
how about CSUN?
CSUN. Let's do a CSUN. All right. I'm going to do the chapter mark in just a second. Is Martine here? John says, I'm not. How is people
Oh, it
must be
is.
seeing him in the sidebar?
So these are people who are probably coming in through the website.
Yeah, maybe.
Hello, Martine.
Martine.
Are you?
All right.
So you're in Chicago, or where are you? Or are you back home?
He went to San Francisco and saw Barry, and then he went to Chicago. Yeah. All right, I got to record, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
We'll do a chapter mark in just a second. All right, let's listen to another CSUN interview. Now I'll do my chapter mark. How many more do we have left, Steve? Do you know?
We have.
You're in
one.
Michigan. One?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no. The gravy chain's over, huh? Where is it? Where did I put it? Where did I put it? Oh, it starts with 11, Raboka. Right. CSUN interview. I'm in the Raboka booth. All right, we are going to skip ahead on that. Okay. 5:30. Okay, I'm doing good. I'm going to make it. Because you're not going to believe this. I have to do Overcast again. Oh. Here we go. Chapter mark. Only 7:30 in Michigan. Yeah. Poor Sandy. She had to read this whole thing, so this is going to be long. It's nap time. Hope people want to learn it again. All right. At the end of May, so June, July. I had to count on my fingers. At the end of May this year, so less than 2 months ago, I decided to learn every single nuance of the podcasting app Overcast, write it up as an article, and talk to you about it on the podcast. I've gotten a lot of traction on that post, especially from longtime users of Overcast who also found the interface a bit opaque and difficult to master. On July 16th, the 10th anniversary of the initial launch of Overcast, Marco Arment released a brand new version of Overcast, which dramatically changed the interface I just finished explaining to you. Now, the changes address some of the opaqueness of the interface while still giving us nearly all of the functionality we had before. Marco also did a lot of work on the back end to modernize the code, which he says makes Overcast even faster than it was before. Now, I decided leaving that 2-month-old post up with entirely incorrect instructions and screenshots would be a bad thing. So, we're gonna do it again because it's that different. At first, I thought this would be a minor rewrite, maybe throw up some new screenshots, but just about every element of Overcast has changed. One important thing to keep in mind as you learn how to use this new version is that Marco's architectural redesign allows him to make changes much more rapidly before, which means functionality and appearance will change over time. Since he really wanted this redesign to ship on the 10th anniversary, some functionality didn't make the deadline, but will be added soon. So I'm hoping this walkthrough has value longer than 2 months, though. Okay, for some reason, I wrote weeks in there, Steve. Do you mind changing the word weeks? Just do a command F on weeks and change it to months.
Okay.
Right? May, June, July, that'd be 2 months. Okay. All right. Before I get into the details of how to navigate the new and improved interface, I want to make a moment to address accessibility. The previous version was quite navigable via VoiceOver, and Marco made a point on the Accidental Tech podcast of asking screen reader users to give him feedback on how he's done in this area on the redesign. Now, as of the time that I was writing this, I had found a couple of places where something was inaccessible. I sent an email to Marco telling him, hey, I found this thing that's not accessible. And he wrote back to me in, I think it was like an hour and 10 minutes. And he said, yeah, I've got it fixed. Download the new version. And it was fixed. So if you read the blog post, you're actually going to see strike through on some of this because by the time I hit publish, he had already fixed it. So he's really on this and is very serious about getting the accessibility right. All right. Let's talk about cost. Overcast is free with very unobtrusive ads. But if you want to remove those ads and support the developer, it's only $10 a year. With the premium subscription, you also get the option to upload audio to a feed you create. If you're already a premium user in the old version of Overcast, you might be surprised to see an ad in Overcast in the new version. Turns out you'll have to open up settings and toggle off banner ads manually. Marco already apologized to Mastodon for missing that flag. It should have been off after the migration. I've also talked to a few people who haven't seen the new version offered to them on my, so you might need to delete it and re-add it. And there will be some time that it's going to mess around getting all your subscription back together. But so all the podcasts you're subscribed to back together, I should say. So let's talk about the main interface because this is where things are so changed. You've got a set of tool buttons across the top that I'll explain in just a minute. Next, you'll see a double row of cards for the most recent 10 episodes of podcasts that you've either listened to partially or are new from your podcast subscriptions. The cards are very pretty, showing you a small version of the podcast artwork, the name of the episode, and how much time is left on the episode. There will always be 10 of these little cards, 2 rows of 5, so if you listen to a new episode or start listening to a new episode, the 10th one will fall off on the right. If you're a VoiceOver user, you won't hear these little cards from the main interface. You'll hear one button called Recents. When selected, it gives you a much more accessible list of recent episodes. Below Recents, you'll find Playlists, and below that, all of your subscribed to podcasts. Across the very bottom, you'll see the album artwork for your currently playing podcast, podcast title, date, and time left, along with a play-pause button. Now let's go through that top row of tools. You'll find a gear on the left that takes you to settings, but we'll get to settings a little bit later. Next is a downward arrow that opens a window called Downloads. Oddly, upon opening Downloads, at least for me, it says Not Downloaded. And it has a list of episodes and shows that I follow with wee tiny album art, which makes it a little bit hard to tell which show is which. If you select one of the not downloaded shows, it will download, or you can tap the Download All button on the upper right. I'm wondering whether this menu really means waiting to download. I'm not quite sure. Now there's a magnifying glass in the upper right, which allows you to search for new podcasts. In the previous version, this was a big plus button. It also lets you search your current downloads for a specific show. When the magnifying glass is selected, you'll see a new screen ready to search by title in Podcasts or My Episodes. When looking for a new podcast, you also get a list of podcast categories if you want to browse for something new to listen to. This is not an exhaustive list of available podcasts within each category by any means, but rather a list of the most popular shows in those categories. If you know the URL for the feed for the show you want to subscribe to, you can use the Add URL button in the upper right. You may not have used this feature before, but it's common as a way to subscribe to a premium version of a podcast. If you want to experiment with adding a podcast by URL, you can go to podfeet.com and click on the big blue button that says subscribe. This will take you to a page where you'll see all of the Podfeet podcasts listed with links to subscribe in 3 different podcatchers, but also a link to the RSS feed. If you right-click and copy that URL, you can use that URL to subscribe in Overcast. By the way, I do want to give another shout out to Kaylee because she complained that it was so hard to find the links to subscribe to the podcast at podfeet.com. So live sitting there next to her, I changed I got rid of one of the buttons and I put a new button in that says subscribe, and it's blue and it looks different from all the other ones. I can't believe I didn't think to do that before. Oh, and it still has a link to subscribe to Chit Chat Lite. I need to go in and delete that one. That's one more remnant that's left. All right, after you subscribe to one show, obviously it'll be the NosillaCast, and then you've selected it, the design of the episode list is much cleaner and easier to understand than it was before. The new screen opens with a small version of the album art, a big button that says following because you just subscribed to it, but you can press that to unfollow, and you get a prominent 3-dot menu. Below that is a quick summary of the podcast and a list of the episodes. The first option under the 3-dot menu on the podcast-specific page takes you to settings for that podcast. You'll get toggles to follow new episodes. You can pin the show to the top of your podcast list. And, I use that pin feature to make sure I don't miss my must-listen-to shows. You can set the sort order and whether to download automatically versus manually. Now, this setting is pretty important in the new version of Overcast because the one key feature Marco removed and will not be putting back is the ability to stream episodes. He explains in the onboarding for the new version that dynamic ad insertion in podcasts causes all kinds of bugs and problems for streaming playback because the download actually gets broken during the stream. If you want to hear more about how streaming caused those problems, listen to him explaining in excruciating detail on the Accidental Tech Podcast, episode 596. So being able to have this download automatically versus manually would allow you to, make sure you download at home and you don't want them all coming in at once. However you used to do streaming, you could kind of dodge it that way by using download manually. Still in the podcast settings screen, you can delete when completed, manually, or 24 hours after completion. I like that you can set an episode limit for shows you like to follow, but maybe don't have your heart set on listening to every episode. If you find that some of your shows have long intros that you always skip, you can set an automatic skip time at the front, and you can even add an automatic skip time on the outro. Now, back on the 3-dot menu, you can go directly to the podcast website, which is also handy. In the old version of Overcast, you used to see the frequency of release for a podcast in the settings menu, but it appears to have been removed or not added back yet. It was pretty cool. Like for the NosillaCast, it said Sunday evenings, and Let's Talk Apple by Bart Bouchat said monthly. This may be a feature that just didn't make the release date. It might come back. I don't know. Now, Marco also reveals in this 3-dot menu how you may be being tracked through the podcast to which you subscribe, and he does this in a privacy section. For example, with my podcast, under privacy, you'll see blueberry.com. Overcast explains that the known capabilities for blueberry.com are stats and hosting. Personally, I use it only for stats. It also shows libsyn.com for my shows and explains that this service can do dynamic ad insertion, stats, and hosting. Well, Libsyn is where I host the files for my shows, and I also get stats there. But as you know, I don't do any dynamic ad insertion. I'm giving you these examples because I think it's cool that you can see what a podcaster might be doing, but it's good to know that it doesn't mean that they are using everything that service might provide. Now, perhaps my two favorite options under the 3-dot menu are mark all as played and delete all episodes for the selected podcast. I have a terrible habit of listening to most of a show and then leave it sitting there in my podcatcher. Now, when I notice I've left a mess on my hands, I can delete them all right from this button. If you're tired of a show, you can delete the entire podcast as well. Now, if we get out of this 3-dot menu, you can see the episodes listed and a toggle between current and all. The distinction there is that all is every episode in the feed, whether you've listened to it or not, and current are the shows you've downloaded. I find I go into all more often than I would have thought, both to go back and forth or back and look for old shows, but also to double check that I didn't accidentally mark an episode as already played that I still want to listen to. Now, if you're not new to Overcast, you'll remember that there used to be a third option here called Archived. This section held podcasts you're not following and have no added episodes or seem to be inactive. This feature is no longer there. Now, on this page showing the podcast episodes, you now have a magnifying glass I mentioned earlier that lets you search just this podcast. Actually, that's not true. Might do a save here if I missed anything. Save. Thank you. Enjoying the slow, calm pace of staying home? Tired of all those interlopers in your town? On this page showing the podcast episodes, you now have a magnifying glass that lets you search just this podcast. I love this new feature. With Chit Chat Across the Pond selected, I can type in Gez and instantly find the episode where I interviewed the Nobel Prize-winning astrophysicist on Chit Chat Across the Pond. It even searches inside the show notes of the podcast, not just the title. Now, if you tap on an episode of a podcast, it will reveal a horizontal highlighted bar. Ooh, what was that sound? Highlighted. If you tap on an episode of a podcast, it will reveal a horizontal highlighted bar with 5 buttons: share, a 3-dot menu, play pause, mark as played unplayed, and delete. The same information was there before, but it's much prettier in this colored rounded rectangle. Now, the first icon is all about sharing, and sharing is nice. You can share a link to the episode with a friend, but you can do even cooler things with sharing. Let's say the podcasters just said something terribly clever, maybe at 22 minutes and 12 seconds into the show. I don't know, perhaps they were explaining how gyroscopes work. If you pause the show at that time, you can share a link at the current time. This is a killer feature of Overcast that I've never seen anywhere else. You can also share a clip where you just isolate a short segment of the show. It's a little bit tricky to edit just the little clip, but when you post it, the viewer will see the podcast album art with a little waveform of the audio as it plays. It's very cool. Finally, you can export the entire audio file. I've been known to use that function to export an audio file and then take a screenshot of the waveform to show the podcaster that they really need to level their audio. I put little arrows on the screenshot going, okay, this is one person talking, this is the other person talking. Look how different these audio levels are. Fix it. I used to do that to the SMR podcast all the time. All right, the episode-specific 3-dot menu has 2 options. One says Add To, and the other one says Move To. And both options show all of your playlists. This is a quick way to manage specific episodes into playlists. Now, right now, I haven't tested this on the latest version Marco came out with today, but it was a little bit buggy when I was first testing it. The first day I tested it, I couldn't get Add To work. But then the next day that did work, but Move To didn't seem to work. To be fair, like I said, I'm writing this up in the first week after a massive update, so I'm sure it'll be resolved probably by the time you read or hear this. Now, one of the things I found tedious in the previous version of Overcast was that it took so many steps to add a podcast to a playlist. When you choose a playlist from the list under Move To or Add To, that choice gets added to a little row of 3 playlists that don't require the extra tap. This row of top playlists will stay there until you select a 4th one, and then the oldest one drops off. At least for me, with very few playlists, this could speed up the process of adding to them. You can also star an episode, which will cause it to show up in the built-in playlist called Starred. Oddly, you can delete the download from this 3-dot menu. It seems kind of unnecessary since there's a trash can right in that highlighted lozenge of tools I told you about. But there's 2 ways to do it. Now, with an episode selected, you also get a little info button on the right. This opens up a new page that packs in a lot of information. It's got the title, the date, and the length of the episode, and it has that bar with the same 5 buttons I just described. Now, this one was the one that wasn't accessible with a voiceover, but it was fixed by the time I published the show notes. Below that, you can see the summary, if there is one, and the show notes. It looks great for Jill from the Northwoods, Buzz, Blossom, and Squeak podcast. I'm going to repeat that, Steve. Right above that screenshot, it says Buzz, Blossom, and Squeak. When I first typed it, it was an N at the end of Blossom, and I fixed it, made it an M, but now it's a capital M. It should be lowercase. Below that, right above the screenshot you just showed.
Got it.
Yeah, thank you. It looks great for Jill from the North. Below that, you can see the summary, if there is one, and the show notes. It looks great for Jill from the Northwoods, Buzz, Blossom, and Squeak podcast. However, this layout revealed that I need to change something in the way I produce my show notes. Somewhere along the line, like a year ago, I was led to understand that Apple Podcasts couldn't deal with HTML links and show notes, and the proposed solution was to put the same text that you see in the normal show notes into the episode summary, but with typed out links. Now, my bulleted list summary is rendered as a giant paragraph with no line feeds in the summary in Overcast. I made the decision to stop putting that second set of show notes into the summary, but let me know if that causes you problems in Apple Podcasts. Now, below all this, you'll see the number of chapters in a little transparent pill button. Tapping the number of chapters brings up the chapter list, and it tells you how long each chapter is. You can select the chapter from this list, and the list will disappear and the podcast will start to play at the chapter mark. It's very clean and intuitive. Hang on. I don't think I said that right. That's not right. Now, below all this, you'll see the number of chapters in a little You can select the... I think you have to... One second. Let me bring it up because I think I wrote that wrong. Overcast. Let's go to the NosillaCast because I know what it's supposed to look like. So if I go to an episode, I go to I, and then I go 7 chapters. I thought I... Hang on. I'm going to do a search here because I thought I wrote something about this. One moment, please. Type in the... Oh, I just missed it in reading. It is there. Yeah, good. Now, below that, you'll see the number of chapters in a little transparent pill button. Tapping the number of chapters brings up the list and how long each chapter is. You can select the chapter from this list, and the list will disappear, and the podcast will start to play at that chapter mark. It's very clean and intuitive. No, that isn't the right one. Hang on. Hang on. Oh, no, I've got this in twice. Yeah, I'm going to have to make sure. Okay. Remind me to fix the whole chapter mark part in the podcast at 6:15 p.m. Okay. Okay, I'm going to put that back up here. Looks like I talked about it twice. Where am I? Okay, gee. You know what? I got an idea. I'm going to say I'm going to come back to chapters in a little bit. That's how I'm going to fix it. Sorry. Go backwards. Oh no! Shoot. I think I'm fixing it in the wrong spot. Okay, where am I? I need to find, let's talk about plot. I'm sorry, but this is, we got a mistake. Okay, here we go. I'll come back to how to use the chapter in a moment. There you go. All right. Try that one more time.
Question.
Yeah.
Are you making changes in Mars Edit?
Oh, I am. Yeah, you better
I've
save.
been doing edits.
Okay, save yours now.
I've saved them.
Okay, you've hit save?
Yes.
Oh, shoot, I see what you're saying. Okay, I tell you what to do. Then I need you to change this to... Oh, nuts. I'm going to send you this. Not to Wine Wednesday, to Steve. Look for this. I sent you a sentence, Steve. It starts with below that.
Yeah.
And it's right under the screenshot you just showed.
I see it. Mm-hmm.
And I want you to replace that whole section with what I just sent you. That's all you need to do.
Oh, it looks the same. Oh, I see.
No,
just that
it's
one
not.
paragraph and leave the line out.
Yes.
Okay.
Good call. Now I got to make sure I don't push. because all your changes won't be there. All right, here goes. Below that, you'll see the number of chapters and a little transparent pill button. I'm going to come back to how to use chapters in a moment because it's a little bit tricky. Finally, on this episode-specific page, you can still see the currently playing show across the bottom. Now let's talk about playlists. I find that playlists are a lot easier to understand, at least for me, in the new version of Overcast. Playlists are cute little round icons in a horizontal sliding row below recents. If you haven't added any playlists, you should see the default one named simply Q, which I use all the time. It's just a simple list where you drop episodes in and order them to your own desires. To the right on the sliding row of icons are 3 more automatic playlists: Downloaded, In Progress, and Starred, which I mentioned earlier. I think all of these are brilliant and useful. Finally, you have a nice big plus button inviting you to create a new playlist. To create a new playlist, tap the plus button with the lines next to it at the bottom of the main screen. Your choices will be Custom Playlist, All Episodes, or Most Recent. I think it's weird to have a playlist that's all episodes. That must be the way somebody likes it. Depending on the breadths of topics you like, Most Recent could be quite an eclectic playlist. Now, I think custom playlists are where the action is. We can name our custom playlist, give it an icon, and change the color. The icons are the SF Symbols library, if you know what that is, but they're just not terribly interesting in my opinion. But there is one that looks like John Travolta in his Stayin' Alive pose from the movie Saturday Night Fever in 1977, so that's of course what I picked. Sort order is rarely an interesting topic, but in Overcast you can sort by oldest to newest and newest to oldest, but also oldest to newest and newest to oldest by podcast, if you followed all that. Now, selecting which podcast will be included in this playlist is interesting. You'll see 2 drop-downs. One says Include and is defaulted to All Matching Episodes, and the second one says From and is defaulted to All Podcasts. I'm pretty sure this would be all episodes. If we change Include to only selected episodes, the From drop-down disappears and we're left to a button to choose which included episodes. Now, included episodes shows you a list of all the shows you subscribe to, and you can go into each one and pick and choose which episodes to add. While this path makes sense, I think I'd probably just start at the podcast listing on the main screen, peruse episodes from there, and use the little Add To button we talked about earlier to add to a playlist. But this might be easier for you. If you go back to Include and choose All Matching Episodes, and From to only selected podcasts, then we can choose entire podcast to add to the playlist. Now, let's all be honest with ourselves. We have high priority podcasts, like the NosillaCast, and we have low priority podcasts. Even though you're handpicking the podcast to be included, Overcast allows you to set podcasts to high or low priority. And then you can set priority mode to ranked or grouped. I was a bit confused by ranked versus grouped, so I asked the question out on Mastodon, and Mike Mills on Mastodon suggested the following. He said, "It sounds to me like ranked lets you pick the order of podcasts in the high and low groups," and he said, think like an array, where grouped is a set of high, unordered, and low podcasts. Well, an array made sense to me, so I think he's probably right. Now, as if that wasn't enough flexibility in custom playlists, you can add additional episodes and excluded episodes. That doesn't completely make sense to me, but, just keep playing with it. Now, as an experiment, I set up a playlist for Apple Podcasts, and I dropped in my favorite shows. When I did, it illustrated one of the pain points for me with Overcast. I'm not entirely sure this is Overcast's fault. In fact, it probably isn't. It's probably just me, but let me elaborate and you can decide. When I created this playlist of Apple Podcasts, one of them was macOS Ken, and it showed 23 episodes of Ken Ray's show. Now, remember I explained how you can change how many episodes to keep? Well, I have macOS Ken set to save only 2, but if you listen closely, the setting is for the number of unplayed episodes. If I go back to my Apple playlist, I can see the shows that have 4 minutes left, 1:50 left, and 7 minutes and 40 seconds left. It means I started them, but I didn't finish them, so they sit there forever. Now, in the previous version of Overcast, one of my complaints was that it was harder than it should be to convince Overcast that you're done with an episode. Like, I actually had one of these Ken Ray episodes said 0:00 left. So I thought I was at the end, but apparently I wasn't. The problem was hitting fast forward a bunch of times to get to the end of the show would always leave a few seconds unplayed. Like, I think 10 seconds would be left no matter what you did. But in the new version of Overcast, if you hit fast forward enough times, it goes all the way to 0. But that doesn't solve the problem of me stopping partway through a show and thinking I'll get back to it someday. In the old version of Overcast, from within a playlist, you can use the 3-dot menu in the upper right to choose Edit Episodes, and it would give you little selection circles next to them. This allowed you to go tap, tap, tap to select and hit delete just one time for all of those. Better yet, you could use the trick that works in a lot of iOS apps when you're in a select menu. Just use 2 fingers to drag along the list, and I was able to select every episode as I dragged across. I was very happy about that. Sadly, in the new version, the selection circles have turned into red circles with a minus sign in them. This means you have to tap the red circle, tap the red trash can, tap the red circle, tap the red trash can. 2 taps for every single episode you want to delete. Sad face emoji. All right, I mentioned that there's a way to clear partially listened to episodes or even not listened at all to episodes, but it's another confusing one. We have a check mark and a trash can to delete, and hitting the check mark makes an episode disappear. So what's going on here? What is the check mark versus the delete trash can? Well, Stephen Getz is a heavy Overcast user, so I asked him what the difference was between the delete and check mark. He explained that the check mark simply means you're saying, I've completed this. So, okay, what happens to a completed episode? Stephen pointed out that in the global settings, you can decide what happens to a completed episode. The default behavior appears to delete completed episodes. So it's literally the same thing as deleting if you don't change that default. But your other options for the checkmark include making you manually delete completed episodes or have them deleted after 24 hours. All right, can we finally play an episode already, Allison? One of my biggest complaints about the previous version of Overcast was the secret hidden cards to the left and right of the main screen when you were playing a podcast episode. I never found those on my own. Stephen Getz had to tell me they were there. And once you realized they were there, probably after someone told you, it worked well, but I didn't know they were there for a very long time. The new version of Overcast completely removes the hidden cards, and instead you have buttons to bring up the same information. To the left of the progress bar in the old and new version of Overcast, if the podcast you're listening to has chapters, you'll see a circle with a bulleted list inside it that will bring them up. This is the same list of chapters that we got to before. Now, if you don't see that chapter button, it means the podcast has no chapters. As you're playing the podcast, you can see a progress bar within the playing chapter. To jump to a chapter, tap on the time on the right-hand side. If you tap on the chapter name and it's a link, it won't jump to that chapter. It'll open the link in your browser. It's very cool to have both options right there, but you do have to pay attention to where you tap. So tap on the time if you want to get to the time, but tap on the name if you want to follow the link. Now, if there's no link, it's okay to tap on just the name. All right, the bottom of the playback screen used to have 5 buttons, but that's been narrowed down to only 3. You'll still have the AirPlay symbol in the center, and you'll still have the little eye in a circle that brings up the show notes. But the left symbol looks like a waveform inside a circle, and that button brings up controls that many people hail as the reason they use Overcast as their podcatcher of choice. This gives you the toggle for smart speed, which shortens silences. This is a terrific way to tighten up a podcast that has long pauses. I have a show where one of the hosts would leave these frustratingly long pauses, and smart speed was why I still like the show. I'll give you a warning, though. Some speakers use pauses for a reason. A while back, I was listening to Bart's Let's Talk Photography podcast, and he was explaining something really complex. I was having a really hard time, though, following him because he wasn't giving the listener any time to absorb what he was saying. I was halfway through writing an angry email to him about it when it occurred to me to maybe check my settings. That's when I discovered Smart Speed had been enabled on Let's Talk Photography. I disabled it, and there was that perfect explainer back in my ears. Now, one of the reasons that happened is that I never seem to remember to use the very obvious custom for this podcast toggle. I have a habit of changing it and then setting custom for this podcast, and that's doing out of order. So I'll turn on Smart Speed for a different podcast and not toggle the custom option beforehand, and suddenly all of my podcasts have this enabled. So be smarter than me and pay attention to that toggle. Now, another custom or global option is to turn on Voice Boost. This is a great feature to add to podcasts that don't level their audio properly, or maybe their overall volume is too low. You can also set the speed of the podcast playback, but watch that custom toggle. You don't want to hear Jill from the North Woods at 2x when you meant to set it to 2x, say, for MacBreak Weekly. You know how with YouTube you can change the playback speed, and as you bump it up a notch, it'll say 1.25x, 1.5x, 1.75x, and 2x. It also has numbers for slowing down, 0.75, 0.5, and 0.25. But with Overcast, Marco's made it a little weird. While there are big tick marks for 1x, 2x, and 3x in Overcast, it's harder to tell what speeds you're picking between those values. The little tick marks between 1x and 2x, there's 5 tick marks, which means there's 6 increments. So those values would be 1.17, 1.34, 1.51, and up. Also, there's only 1 tick mark between 2x and 3x. At least we could assume that's 2.5x. My favorite one, though, is the small tick mark below 1x. Is that 0.5x? 0.1x? 0.05x? I don't know. Now, Stephen Getz pointed out that if you have Smart Speed enabled, Overcast shows you how fast you're listening. If you haven't changed the speed from 1x, as the show progresses, you'll see the speed above Smart Speed changing to more than 1x. If you then slide up on these smaller tick marks between 1x and 2x, the number above Smart Speed gets even bigger. I realize it doesn't make a darn bit of difference what those tick marks represent. We all just adjust till it sounds right for a particular show, but it still bugs me that they're in 1/6 increments. Now, if you use Podcast to go to sleep, there's a timer to let the player stop and an elapsed time at the end of the episode or to end the current chapter. Oh, no, you don't get paid overtime because you were late to work today, Kevin. It is 6:05 and I'm just getting into settings. I'm almost done. Let's see. Wait, you don't have a fast internet connection. Isn't anybody letting you use their Wi-Fi? All right, I'm going to keep going here. But if you have to leave, I understand. Looks like people are sticking around, though. We're getting to the end. Now, before I close out here, let's take a look at settings, which you get to from the main screen using the gear icon in the upper left. If you'd like to listen to podcasts on more than one device, you can create a login to sync your playlists and even progress through shows across devices. Now, Overcast not only runs on iOS, but iPadOS. If you have an Apple Silicon Mac, you can run the iPad version of Overcast. Next, you'll see premium settings, if you've chosen to support the developer by coughing up the princely sum of $10 a year. This is where you could disable banner ads for podcasts. Also in premium settings, you can enable file uploads. This is a feature that allows you to download a recording to your Mac, and then through the web interface at overcast.fm, you can upload the file, and you'll be able to play this audio like a normal podcast episode on your iPhone or the web. Finally, in premium settings, you can choose between a grand total of 2 app icons. Now, Overcast used to show you how much total storage your podcasts are taking up, and if you tapped into that menu, you could see all of your podcasts sorted by storage. I don't see that feature in settings now. Back then, you could even see how much cellular data you would use by downloading and streaming podcasts, but that's also no longer available. Remember, though, this feature might just not have made the deadline Marco set for himself and could be added back later. I just don't know. Under download settings, you do get a toggle for whether to globally allow cellular data for downloads. Since streaming is no longer an option, the important section switch is whether to download new episodes automatically or manually, like I mentioned earlier. Keeping this set to manually globally would mean you can always be in control of how your cellular data is used. Additionally, for every podcast, you can override that main setting and change it to download automatically or manually. Hopefully these changes, along with the work Marco did on the back end to completely redesign his database and how data is accessed, will make downloading almost as good as streaming used to be for quick startup. Now, you'd think that delete would be a pretty obvious thing, but here again, Marco gives us some options. You can keep delete as a manual option where you have to hit the delete button to make an episode go away, but you can also set episodes to delete when they're completed. If you don't feel right having them go away that quickly, you can set them to delete 24 hours after they're completed. I'm fascinated that this 24-hour delay exists because I never think of a podcast episode as precious, unless it's one I created myself, of course. But people must like this feature or you wouldn't have designed it in. As if this wasn't enough control, you can set this method of deletion on a per podcast basis. You can always get them back. They're still in the feed, right? Oh well. Every podcatcher has a seek back and seek forward button, and with Overcast, you can change how many seconds it goes. I very often want to go back to hear what someone said, so I set my seek back to 15 seconds. But I also like to skip ads, so I set my seek forward to 60 seconds. By making one a multiple of the other, I can go forward 60 seconds once, and if I hear the show is resumed, I can jump back by 15 seconds, and I know that if I hit it 4 times to go back, I'm back where I started. This can be useful if you've done, say, 120 seconds and you want to go back. Now, speaking of seek, Marco added a wicked cool feature to Overcast, Undo Seek. This feature is most useful if you accidentally hit the progress bar and the podcast jumps to an unknown location. For a few seconds, you'll see a go back button on screen. I wrote in the show notes that I guarantee I'll be using it. I used it today. Go back is available when you jump chapters too. Now, still in settings, you can change the theme to always be dark or choose from 15 different colors for light and dark themes. I chose a nice purple, as you can see in my screenshots, but you do you. I talked at the beginning about how you have these little cards for recent episodes, but if you don't find that useful, you can just toggle them off under Customize Home Screen. If you don't use playlists, you can toggle those off too. One of the useful but oddly named sections of settings at the very end is called Nitpicky Details. By default, Overcast will autoplay the next episode in a playlist or in a podcast with more than one episode, but you can set it to stop after each episode if you'd rather do that. Overcast has a smart resume feature that rewinds slightly after pausing and even slightly adjusts the seek to fall between words. I mean, that's a lot of math going on there. I love this feature, especially if I'm running Apple Navigation, because she keeps stopping my podcast to tell me where to go, and with Smart Resume, I don't miss anything. She backs it up enough that I can hear it. If you don't favor Smart Resume, though, you can toggle it off. And we talked about the seek settings a moment ago, where I recommended you set your seek forward to be an obvious multiple of your seek forward time so you could get back to exactly where you were. A while back, I noticed it wasn't always going back to where I started. That's because of a feature in settings called Seek Acceleration. When this is turned on, it will increase the interval when repeatedly seeking to skip time more quickly. It's a cool feature now that I know what was causing it, and you can toggle it off if you don't favor it. My engineering brain cannot live with this on. I had to toggle it off. Now imagine you have a playlist that has specific podcasts at the top that you want to listen to first. Now you've gone down to a lower priority show. When that one is done, Overcast will move on to the next one down. But you can override that in Nitpicky Details with the Play Top Episodes Next toggle. So if a new one has showed up, it'll jump back up to that one. I guess some of these are really nitpicky. Now, Overcast has its own built-in browser for opening links from podcasts, but you can change the behavior to have them open in your system browser, which is a very nice way to be. Now, this control used to be labeled Open in Safari, so it coolly recognizes people may have changed their default browser. I've never noticed Overcast using haptics, but evidently they're there because you can reduce them. There's a toggle for icon badge number, and in just delightful snark, Marco says, "Show the number of unfinished episodes on Overcast icon to add stress to your life." I love that. Now, this toggle won't do anything unless you go into your device's settings, notification, find Overcast, and then toggle on badges. When I did it, I had 85 unfinished episodes. I definitely turned that one back off. At the very bottom of Nitpicky Details, there's an interesting graphic explaining the remote episode skip toggle. It shows almost like a Morse code level explanation of how your headphones allow you to click once to play pause, twice to fast forward by your chosen amount, triple click to seek backwards. But then there's a click and hold for next podcast and a double click and hold to go to the previous podcast. Now, I find using my Beats Fit Pro headphones to click and double click is pretty easy, but triple click to go back is pretty hard. I don't go to the next or previous podcast often enough to remember the sequence, but if you're that good, you'll be glad it's there. I'm not going to read that part. I promise, we're in the home stretch here, folks, but there are just a few more things in the main settings area to go through. You can send feedback from right within the app settings, and there's a link to head straight to rating Overcast in the App Store. In the previous version of Overcast, you could import an OPML file of podcasts exported from another podcatcher. As of the time of this writing, he has not yet implemented this feature, so if you're looking to switch from another app, it's not quite time for you. Again, I don't know he's going to put it in, but this seems like a pretty big, important feature. I imagine he is. Now, you could just declare podcast bankruptcy and start over and jump into Overcast. Now, the final thing you'll see in settings is how much smart speed has saved you beyond speed adjustments alone. I've saved 95 hours so far, and I was really proud of that number until other NosillaCastaways started piping up with numbers 5 times or even more saved than I had been saving. Now, if you're an iPad user, you'll be delighted with the layout and design you now have with the new version of Overcast. I'm not going to go through the layout and how it's different from the iPhone, but I did want to mention that it's much more iPad friendly now. Additionally, remember that the iPad app will run on your Apple Silicon Mac. And I did notice I had to delete Overcast and re-download it from the App Store to get it to run on my Apple Silicon Mac. And I think that's because I'm running an iPad app and I'm actually in the App Store for the iPad app, and it's a little janky. And that might be why I had to download the new version after deleting it. Okay, the bottom line is that Overcast is a terrific podcatcher, even if you have simple needs to subscribe and play back shows, but it really shines for the Power Podcast listener. If you want to listen more efficiently and with better audio, Smart Speed and Voice Boost are great features. The redesign addresses a lot of the confusion, and I think it makes it much more intuitive now. If you want to customize your experience, Overcast is there for you, but if you want to use it as it comes out of the box, it's great for that too. You can use it for free with ads or throw the developer a measly $10 a year. And one more thing I like about Overcast, which you might appreciate. When I'm ready to post my shows, I hit Publish in Feeder, which publishes the new RSS file to my feeder, my server, I should say. I immediately pick up my iPhone, I open Overcast, open my show's feed, and I pull down to refresh. If I've done my job correctly, the show instantly begins to download in Overcast. I do not know how Overcast can do it so quickly. In contrast, Apple Podcasts can take tens of minutes to be ready to download. And that was before they started adding automatic transcripts. One more reason that I love Overcast. Whew.
Wow. That was a marathon.
Yeah, that's why I thought I should move the MacStock story to next week.
That's right.
Because Security Bits is an hour long.
Oh. Oh, my goodness. What are you at here? 55.
I'm at 55 minutes.
Okay.
All right. We'll see if anybody makes it to the end. Okay, I understand if people got to get going. And by the way, my lights have turned off. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, it's after 6:15.
Actually, can you turn off SD phone switch to make sure that doesn't go off?
All right.
Because we're getting ready for a chapter mark. This is going to do a 5-second copy link. Going to do a 5-second support the show. Oh, you talked to Marco and he suggests I change the cache on my website. Oh, slowness of updating Overcast. Oh, interesting. Okay. Chicken is burnt and dry by now. Sorry. I'd like to give a big shout out to Kenneth Kleinman for yet another generous donation to the podcast. He went to podfeed.com/PayPal and chose a dollar amount that demonstrates the value he gets out of the show. Thank you so much, Kenneth, for your continued support. All right, Security Bits. All right. Get ready to start counting chapters, Steve. Thank you, Kevin. Copy link. Paste. All right. This is going to be a massive file. So I've got the chapter mark for Security Bits. That's good. Gonna drop on the Security Bits music. Where do you go? You go down here. And then I'm going to go get... You sure I want Roboca in here, Steve? That was only 4 minutes.
Yeah, that's
not enough to move the needle, is it?
Right.
All right, so let's do, I get rid of this, and I get rid of me, and I move Bart up here, about right there, and I let Steve hear plink. Blink. All right, hopefully you heard it. Let's see. All right, I think that's probably not right. I think you got to move over just a little bit there. All right, let's hear how this is. Thank you so much, Kenneth, for your continued support. Is that too fast? 1 hour and 20 minutes.
Fine.
Well, it's that time of the week again. It's time for Security Bits with Bart Booth Shots. How are you doing today, Bart?
I am doing fine.
Week. All right. We had to go long because it was CrowdStrike. Let me see.
Remember, folks, stay patched so you stay secure.
All right. Here we go. And we're coming out. Well, that was a mammoth show. 2 hours and 4 minutes. I'm sorry. I couldn't help myself. Anyway, that's going to wind us up for this week. Did you know you can email me at allison@podfeed.com anytime you like? If you have a question or a suggestion, just send it on over. Remember, everything good starts with podfeed.com. You can follow me on Mastodon at podfeed.com/Mastodon. If you want to listen to the podcast on YouTube, you can go to podfeed.com/YouTube and see all of the videos that we talked about during the show. If you want to join the fun in the conversation, you can join our Slack community at podfeed.com/Slack, where you can talk to me and all of the other lovely NosillaCastaways. You can support the show at podfeed.com/Patreon or with a one-time donation like Kenneth, our hero, did at podfeed.com/PayPal. And if you want to join in the fun of the live show, head on over to podfeed.com/live on Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific time and join the friendly and enthusiastic NosillaCastaways. We'll be broadcasting from Lindsay's house next week, so you might get to hear my grandchildren too. Thanks for listening and stay subscribed.
I count 7.
Okay, let's see. Oh, you missed CrowdStrike, huh? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can't count it when it does this. I'm just going to embiggen the window. It's going to look stupid. I know. Bring this down. There. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 7. There are 7 lights.
We're good.
All right, everybody. Did anybody make it to the end? Oh, a bunch of people made it to the end.
Yeah, almost
Awesome.
everyone. Sandy had to leave, and who else? Someone else.
Oh, thanks, Tim. You didn't think that was too much. That's why I wanted to do it right away because I knew it was long on top of Bart's thing, but to be able to, if I do it late, then, everybody needs to know right now how to use it. Kevin and I left.
Okay.
Oh, all right. We are exported. I think we are good. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Let these people go. Yes.
Let my people go.
Let these people go.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to need a
NosillaCastaways.
beverage when you get back, when you're done, Steve.
Oh, I think I can handle that.
All right. See everybody next week. Bye, Rose.
Bye, everyone.